The following program is sponsored by CBN.
Coming up, a church that opens its doors to terrorists.
There was a time whenever I would have killed some of them.
And whose pastor used to be one of them.
I know that I am the most hated pastor in this community.
Plus, legendary singer-songwriter Don Moen, live. The award-winning worship artist reveals the true story behind the hit song, God Will Make a Way, on today's 700 Club.
Well, folks, we've got a jam-packed story for you today. I mean, there's so much news, I hardly know how to take care of it. But I want to start off with Wendy. Wendy, do you know who the ultimate narcissist is in our society?
Oh, Lord have mercy. There's a lot of them right now.
Yeah, well, take a clue. Take a wild guess.
The ultimate narcissist right now. Well, I know who the liberals think it is.
Well, who do the conservatives think it is?
Conservatives probably, I just don't know, Pat.
Oh, okay.
I'm afraid to insult somebody.
Well, our last president, if you can believe, he had a speech that was less than an hour. He referred to himself 92 times, according to Drudge, 92 times in one short speech in which he was criticizing the president as being a, quote, tin pot dictator or something. But I mean, Barack Hussein Obama is the most narcissistic human being. He just thinks he's the greatest. 92 times. Can you believe that?
That's a lot. That's a
Oh,
lot.
man. What you learn is don't say I. You know, take I. If you're writing a speech, forget the I's and the my and all that stuff. All right. There's a group down in Honduras called Libre. It's sponsored, has one of the Honduran legislators is active in it, Libre. And the concept of Libre is to cause chaos and confusion. That's what they do. It is an old communist trick to cause confusion and chaos in an otherwise peaceful society. Well, Libre has spawned this caravan of Central American migrants heading for the United States. They're talking about as many as 7,000 people now, and it's expected to reach the U.S. border just in time for the elections. And some immigration experts believe there's a hidden agenda at work. Well, there isn't any question about it. There's a hidden agenda. Wendy?
Yeah, meanwhile, Mexico has promised to stop the caravan in its tracks after President Trump threatened to cut off U.S. aid. CBN's national security correspondent Eric Rosales has that story.
President Trump on Monday said the United States will begin to cut off or reduce aid to countries like Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, as citizens from those countries continue to make their way to the United States border as part of the so-called caravan of migrants. President Trump also declared an emergency, stating that unknown Middle Easterners had joined the group.
The Democrats would rather destroy American communities than defend America's borders.
This whole problem that has been going on now, really since 2012, was precipitated by the Obama administration's creation of DACA. People got the message that kids could stay.
Steve Camarata of the Center for Immigration Studies blames Congress for not fixing the broken immigration system. Some immigrants, he says, are using these undocumented children to get their day in court and never showing up for it. Camarata adds these Hondurans have traveled through Guatemala and Mexico, and both countries have asylum procedures, but their goal is to live illegally in a rich country like the United States.
The number of people in the asylum queue right now is is 300,000 plus. That has grown more than sixfold in the last few years. So there's been an explosion. The whole thing is kind of ground to a halt, our ability to process these claims. Everybody knows that. Come with the kid. We'll release you into the United States.
Heritage Foundation senior policy analyst Ana Quintana writes that former Honduran legislator Bartolo Fuentes, a member of the radical leftist Libre Party, is behind the caravan. According to Quintana, Libre is not a political party, but a destabilizing movement. It was founded in 2011 by the former president of Honduras, Manuel Zelaya. She adds Zelaya is an ally of socialist governments in Latin America, like the Castro regime in Cuba. She calls this caravan antic right out of the left's disorder and chaos playbook. Pentagon sources tell CBN News right now some 2,100 National Guard troops are working side by side with Border Patrol agents. Right now, the Pentagon has not received any orders from the president to increase those numbers along the border. Eric Rosales, CBN News.
My counsel to the president, and he's probably not taking it, is to get a division of United States troops down there, a whole division, 20,000 men. And what we need to do is to set up soup kitchens, to set up some tents, to set up, if nothing else, some cots out in the open so that we can house these people. But we can't let them come into the United States. We cannot have this kind of attack on our borders. It'll happen year after year after year. If this one succeeds, and the next one will come, and the next one. And what Trump is saying, we've got to fix the broken immigration policies. And we can't do it. I mean, the Obama administration has left this thing in tatters. And now what are we going to do? Well, we've got to have intelligent immigration policies. It's not that we want to keep people out. We are a nation of immigrants, so it refreshes our population to have new people coming in. But you want people who are scientists and engineers and business people and people who are capable, and not poverty-stricken people with diseases who you'll have to put on welfare immediately and begin to give all kinds of Social Security and social benefits. We can't have that. I mean, the budgets of these states won't hold it. The budget of the United States can't stand it. And not to mention what it'll do to the fabric of our society. We cannot allow this. But the president had better get a division down there right now. If he hadn't done it, he said he's going to use troops. Well, according to the law, he's perfectly capable of doing that. The so-called posse comitatus laws don't apply to an attack on our border. So you can put United States troops to defend our borders, and we should do that. Now, speaking of the president, he had an amazing rally in Texas last night. He's campaigning for somebody who used to be a bitter rival. He called him Lying Ted, but now they have a love affair. He loves him, and he was down there in Houston, 100,000 people, screaming and shouting about let's make America great again. John Jessup has more.
Thanks, Pat. The president campaigned in Houston for Republican Senator Ted Cruz. Cruz has a narrow lead over his Democratic opponent, and the GOP hopes to seal the deal. CBN's Abigail Robertson explains why the Lone Star State is still in play.
In just under a decade, Texas has grown by more than 3 million people, which many Texans say is a big reason why Democratic Senate candidate Beto O'Rourke is polling historically well against Republican incumbent Senator Ted Cruz. That's why President Trump came to Houston Monday night to help his former primary opponent.
Got to vote for Ted Cruz. Democrats, the Democrats are a big risk to the American family, and our country cannot afford to take those kind of risks.
John Graves, president of Vision America, tells CBN News he's not surprised to see Republicans losing a grip on the conservative stronghold.
I've been telling people for years Texas is trending that way. Donald Trump won Ohio by 8.1%. He won Texas by 9%. And people think of Ohio as a purple state. They don't think of Texas as one.
Vision America encourages Christians around the country to vote. Their nonpartisan voter guide for Texas shows where both candidates stand on issues like the Supreme Court, right to life, and protecting religious liberty. Over the weekend, however, an unknown person made fraudulent copies of the guides, changing the text of the issues, and mixed them into piles passed out at multiple churches in Texas.
They snuck inside churches to deceive church members. And I've been around this for over 20 years. I've never seen or heard anything like that.
O'Rourke has seen support from some pro-life women in Texas unhappy with the families being separated at the border, and the fake guide claims Senator Cruz supports this. Cruz told CBN News he strongly opposes the policy.
I can tell you, when we saw the issue of family separation, I introduced legislation. I stepped forward and led legislation that would mandate families stay together, that we keep families together, that we keep kids with their parents.
The fraudulent guide also claims O'Rourke supports the right to life because he increased access to health care, without showing his stance on abortion.
I will only vote to confirm a Supreme Court justice who believes in a woman's right to make her own decisions about her own body.
O'Rourke strongly opposes the president, saying he will vote for impeachment if elected and will not support a wall on the southern border. Cruz, on the other hand, has embraced the president, inviting Trump to headline the Monday rally, where tens of thousands gathered.
I am honored that President Trump is here endorsing and supporting my campaign, and I look forward to campaigning alongside him in 2020 for his re-election as President of the United States.
O'Rourke has raised more than twice as much money as Cruz's campaign, but with a short window left until Election Day, Cruz still holds a substantial lead in the polls. Reporting from San Antonio, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thanks, Abby. Pat, O'Rourke has a clear competitive financial advantage, but it's still an uphill climb there in Texas.
Well, it's Texas. Let's face it, Texas is still conservative, and I think Cruz is going to go ahead. But O'Rourke is, they call him the new Kennedy and all that stuff, but he's not telling everybody what he really believes. And when you hear what he really believes, I'll vote the first thing to impeach the president. What are you going to impeach him for? What's he done that's impeachable? Well, I'm going to vote to impeach him anyhow. Well, that's not the kind of senator Texas wants to see. But in any event, it looks like Cruz is going to win. But that rally by the president was just extraordinary. I mean, if you saw it on television, it was extraordinary. Now, according to the Wall Street Journal, Turkey is using the drip, drip, drip method of getting the truth out about what happened to that Saudi journalist. So John has more on that.
That's right, Pat. Turkey's president promised to reveal the naked truth on the murder of a Saudi journalist today, but he fell far short of delivering any new details. In a speech before Parliament, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi's murder was premeditated and carried out by a 15-man Saudi hit squad. 7 of the men involved in the murder reportedly belonged to the protection detail of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia.
My call is first and foremost to Saudi Arabia's King Salman and to senior administration. Istanbul is where the incident took place. Therefore, my offer is for these 15 people, plus 3 people, the 18 arrested, to be tried in Istanbul.
Khashoggi disappeared on October 2nd during a visit to the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Pat, the story just isn't letting up.
Well, it's not letting up because the Saudis aren't telling the truth. I mean, they've lied and lied and lied. It's been dissembling and a half-truth and a little here and a little there. Now it turns out there was a body double of Khashoggi walking around after they killed him. And they had some kind of a bone saw, and they said, well, he was killed in a fist fight and somebody choked him. Well, why do you bring a bone saw if you're going to, and where's his body? I mean, it was a premeditated murder. You know, there's a lady named Maureen Dowd who writes in the New York Times, and she had a very, very perceptive column, and I'd like to congratulate her for about Saudi Arabia. And what, in essence, she said is they have bribed their way into the hearts of America. They have set up foundations in schools. They have paid huge amounts of money to universities. They have given money to politicians. They have financed all kinds of projects in America. And they have done everything they can to bring forth that Wahhabi version of Islam into the country. But what she also points out, we should not forget, is that the people on 9/11, when they went after the towers in New York and the Pentagon, these men were all Saudis. They were all Saudis. Muhammad Atta was a Saudi. And Osama bin Laden, like it or not, was a Saudi, a wealthy Saudi, I might add. and they have bribed and cajoled their way. Right now, we are producing more oil in the United States than they are. And oil or not, or arms deal or otherwise, we cannot be allied with a group of people who have persecuted women and have kangaroo courts and have this religious police that is just incredibly bad. They were supposed to be our friends. And as she pointed out in the story, after 9/11, the Bush administration allowed the entire family of the ambassador and all his relatives to get on a 737 and several planes, I guess, and fly out of here before there was any repercussions or they were brought up on any kind of charges. So it's time that Mohammed bin Salman get brought to trial. He's responsible for murder, and I think the president's got to say, okay, we still want to maintain a relationship with the Saudis, but we cannot have this anymore, these things they're doing, and we certainly can't allow this man to go scot-free. And we can't excuse him or try to make any kind of accommodation with him. He's a murderer, and he's had a hit squad. And there's no question that this was premeditated. This is a hit squad that came in when they have body doubles and they have bone saws and they have all this kind of stuff. There's no doubt they intended to kill this man, dismember his body, torture him, and then hide the evidence. And that's what they've been doing. And nobody with any intelligence is buying it. They've been lying through their teeth. John.
Pat, a series of earthquakes struck off the western coast of Canada Sunday and Monday. 3 quakes occurred near Vancouver Island about an hour of each other on Sunday night. 2 measured 6.5 and the third 6.8. 2 smaller quakes hit on Monday. No damage or tsunamis were reported, but seismologists say the unusual occurrence is a reminder of the complicated tectonic setting in the region. Well, during these times of uncertainty, the world is looking at the upcoming November elections as one of the most important in U.S. history. 2 American Christian leaders took their concerns to Jerusalem recently. There, they told CBN's Chris Mitchell why they believe prayer and action are the keys to the midterms.
On November 6th, Americans will decide the makeup of the House of Representatives and the Senate for the next 2 years. Christian leaders Cindy Jacobs and Lance Wallnau told CBN News the church can play a vital role in those elections.
I think that we need to pray that God will raise up righteous leaders. We're at a tipping point for the nation, and I believe that if we do not vote righteously, then we're going to see some things start unraveled. So as intercessors, we want to pray, you know, that God will be exalted.
Wallnau sees freedom on the line and a time to act.
We need to mobilize in our country so that we are actually able to occupy the spaces where we have freedom and push back on having those freedoms taken away. And most Christians don't want to mobilize. They don't want to be activists. But the book of Acts is about acts. And that's the root of activism. You've got to get engaged.
Jacobs is mobilizing a 40-day prayer event.
One thing we're doing is there's a group of prayer networks that we have all banded together, and we have something called Pray in Unity.
The website prayinunity.org provides prayer guides beginning September 28th through Election Day.
You can sign up, you know, prayer walk your street, or find a prayer group at your church, but please pray. Pray for your family, but always pray beyond your family, because your family will suffer under unrighteous administrations if you don't pray for the nation.
They both agree prayer is a big step, followed by actually voting.
We have to pray, but we have to mobilize and vote. And I think that sometimes we think that the prayer is a substitute for the corresponding action. And you can't hire someone else to do your civic duty. You got to vote for the congressman that's in your district. You can vote for the senator in your state. These are elections right now where you have direct authority in your territory. And so this is where Christians have to show up in their own territory.
You know, voting is spiritual. Voting is actually a spiritual act because we're called to steward our nations. We're called to disciple our nations. So if we vote, then we will get righteous leaders.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Pat, back to you.
You know, Jesus was given a choice. They said, who should we pay taxes? Should we pay taxes to Caesar or should we give it to God? And he said, show me a coin. And he looked at the coin and said, whose face and superscription is on this coin? They said, it's Caesar's. Okay, render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and to God what belongs to God. What belongs to Caesar when we live in a free country is intelligent citizenship. The average person in America can't tell you who their congressman is, who their senator is. They don't have a clue about the separation of powers. They know almost nothing about the Constitution. And it's just remarkable what they don't know. But we have to be intelligent, and then we have to vote. And I'm telling you, folks, this election is crucial. We're looking at a time where we're facing either continued order and prosperity, or we're going to look at chaos and negativity. And I'm just not one who's going to vote for negativity. I think it's time, but you must go to the polls. And I think, and I don't know about the registration. Some people you can register right on the day of the election. So some you have to be registered, but it depends on your state. But nevertheless, assuming you are or can be registered, you need to vote. You need to vote. It's just absolutely crucial. Oh, I mean, here in Virginia, for example, there's a tremendous amount of money. I talked to a congressman yesterday. He said it's a record amount of money being spent in this second district. Record. They've never had this much money being spent on a congressional district before.
Here in Virginia.
In the second one, where we're living right now, in this one, which, I mean, it's a record amount of money that people are just spending. And like in Texas, that O'Rourke has raised so much money. And it's, the big leftist groups are pouring money in to try to shift the balance, and it's just so vitally important to vote. It really is. So render to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. Do both. But in terms of Christian citizenship, what belongs to Caesar is your informed, intelligent, active citizenship. Do not sit home on Election Day, and it's coming up with just a few more days. We haven't got many more days.
We got to pray and we got to vote.
Pray and vote. Okay, what you got?
Up next, it's a church that sits on the borders of two warring communities, and its members include fighters from both sides of the battle.
As far as I'm concerned, a terrorist is a terrorist. For the Holy Spirit to break into that is something that is supernatural. And yet we've seen that happen so many times, even here in Belfast.
Hear how this Belfast church is bringing two communities together next.
Hey, you're watching the 700 Club. It's a news day, a lot of stuff going on in the world, and you don't want to miss any of it. For decades, Catholics and Protestants waged a brutal war against each other in Northern Ireland. And even though the violence ended 20 years ago, true peace is still elusive. Dale Hurd reports from the city of Belfast.
There is peace in Belfast, officially. But this wall still separates Catholics and Protestants, and this gate still closes every night. New Life City Church sits squarely on Belfast's so-called peace barrier. Part of its building in Catholic Belfast, part of it in Protestant Belfast. It welcomes those who were once mortal enemies.
Among those that come to our church regularly, Sunday after Sunday, are those who are from terrorist backgrounds. At one time would have wanted to have killed each other. There was a time whenever I would have killed some of them.
Jack McKee was a soldier during the war and today pastors New Life City Church along with his son Johnny.
And I think that many Americans looking on would believe that we reached peace in this country. We never really got there. There is a semblance of peace, but peace does not really exist.
Parts of Belfast today are still racked by violence, drug abuse, and broken families. Members of Protestant and Catholic paramilitary groups have morphed into gangs, running drugs and protection rackets, and killing anyone who gets in their way. This church, in an old warehouse, sits like a fortress in the middle of it all. It's one thing to preach peace and reconciliation. It's another thing to put your church on the borderline between forces that want to kill each other.
I don't think there is a building quite like this in the world, where you have had two opposing communities, two opposing people groups that have literally killed each other by the thousands.
Most joined the fighting as teenagers and spent the prime of their lives in prison. Oso murdered a man before he was 18.
I came across a group of men who had two Roman Catholics up against the wall. They asked me had I got a gun, and I says, no, I don't have a gun, but I can get one. As they said that, one of the Catholic guys ran away. So I took the other guy, and I took him away. I set myself up as judge, jury, and executioner, and I took that young man's life.
Today, Pastor Jack and former paramilitary members of his church carry the cross down the middle of the Shankill Road in what was once a war zone in Belfast, lifting the cross as the only hope for this divided community.
I carry the cross today because I come from a republic in West Belfast, and today is my personal token of reconciliation to the Unionist, Loyalist community, and to literally raise that cross above that gun.
And for to carry the cross down the Shankill Road, where I used to be a paramilitary commander, a UVF commander, now to be a Christian.
You've got Republicans who have been born again. You've got Protestants who've been born again. So the significance of the cross is that the cross is for everybody in Ulster or Ireland. That here was a man that died on the cross for the sins of everyone. And it was a great opportunity to walk around through both communities and to lift his name above every other name.
As far as I'm concerned, a terrorist is a terrorist. And for the Holy Spirit to break into that is something that is supernatural. And yet we've seen that happen so many times, even here in Belfast.
Jack McKee has been threatened with death more than once for taking a leading role in trying to stop the violence in Belfast.
I know that I am the most hated pastor in this community, possibly in Northern Ireland. I don't know any other pastor in this country who's been sentenced to death or had more death attempts on them than I have. And I'm not overstating that.
He's written a book called What Does It Take?
And it's simply asking the question, what does it take in order to move communities away from division? The church has the answer to that.
New Life City Church opens its doors to the community daily with a soccer field, a coffee shop, and programs for those who need help.
This community needed another church, but not just another church.
It's only through the grace of God and what He is doing. There's very often things that take place within this building that we never orchestrated, that we never planned, that we never purposed, but it just happens.
I stand back sometimes and I say, this is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. And I just get amazed when I see people coming to faith in Jesus at any time, but knowing they come from a terrorist background and that they're able to come and sit in the same row from those who were on the opposite side and worship God alongside them. Only God could have done that.
Dale Hurd, CBN News, Belfast.
Magnificent. Doesn't Dale do a fantastic job? I'm so proud of him. All right.
He does. He gets the most amazing stories.
That's one you'd never see.
No, all over the world. Who knew that was happening? Yeah. Well, coming up, a top cop who tried to live by the letter of the law.
I saved all the good I had for what I did on the street. I felt like I had to live a level up, above that.
Watch what happens when he gets tired of being the good guy. That's next.
Well, you're watching the 700 Club on this exciting day, and we've got some wonderful things for you coming up, so don't go away. As an officer, Adam Davis tried to live by the book. During his career in the police department, he worked in criminal investigations, the sex crime divisions, and hostage negotiations. Adam has seen the worst parts of humanity on display and was beating him down on the inside.
We were in church a lot of times. We were there 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. It made me feel good. It made me feel like I was closer to God.
When he was 10, Adam Davis asked Jesus to come into his heart and forgive his sins. But to him, being a Christian meant following God's rules, and trying to be perfect.
I was trying to be good enough. I was trying to live up to a standard, and I can't be good enough. If I can't be good enough, what's the benefit of being good?
Unable to keep his self-imposed high standards, Adam started making compromises. Through junior high and high school, he went to church on Sunday, but for the rest of the week, he drank and chased girls.
Was any of it really sin? Yeah, it was sin. It was bad. It hurt him, but I couldn't comprehend that because I didn't know him on a relational level. I still had trouble understanding and comprehending who Jesus was, more than just a story figure.
After graduating from high school, Adam married his girlfriend, Amber. He tried to be a good Christian, but always left Jesus behind at church.
I knew him on a prayer level. I knew him at an altar level, but not at an outside level where you're living every day. I was putting God in a box, that he had to exist within the confines of a church. It put me in a position to where I was more willing to make bad decisions that would not honor him.
By 2009, Adam and Amber had 2 kids and a third on the way. Adam decided to join the Dothan, Alabama police force.
Being a law enforcement officer, I didn't go into it because I thought it was going to be easy, or just get to drive fast and have guns, and I felt called there.
It also fit into his view of a religion without grace.
My view of God was like rules and regulations and standards, and I wanted to hold people to the law. I wanted to enforce the law and do a good job at it, but at the same time, I felt like I had to live a level up, above that. It's intimidating, it's exhausting. It's just mentally exhausting to live like that, to feel like you've got to always be perfect.
He quickly moved up the ranks in a variety of departments, but paid a heavy price for those promotions.
Dealing with the stress of the job, that was having a tremendous toll on my marriage because it's taking a toll on me. Mental exhaustion, spiritual exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, physical exhaustion, and you just don't want to communicate. You shut down, you lock yourself out. I saved all the good I had for what I did on the street, or what I did in investigations, or what I did on the job. And I gave my best away and didn't save it for my family.
When Adam started working in the sex crimes division, his empathy for the victims made him question God's love.
Seeing the pain that others went through, seeing the just blatant evil that's present in society that most people will never know about, caused me to ask God, if you love us, why do these things happen? If you love us, then why do little babies suffer? Why do children suffer? Why do innocent people suffer? And why is evil so prevalent? And it was almost on a level of interrogating God and saying, if you are love, and your Bible says you're love, your word says you're love, if you're love, then why do these things happen? My wrestle match with God lasted 6 months, but it felt like eternity. I got to a point to where I said, I have tried to prove you. I have tried to find facts about you. All I have is your word. I said, I can't prove that you exist. I can't put a finger on you. But I believe in you because I choose to believe in you. Inside, I was broken, beat down, and probably felt more defeated than I'd ever felt in my life. And I just totally surrendered. Nothing compares to the love, the embrace I felt from Jesus in that moment.
Surrendering to God released the pressure Adam felt to be perfect, and he invited Jesus into every area of his life.
I didn't really have a desire to do some of the other things I had done in the past, so I didn't fit in anymore with certain places. It just didn't feel right. It made me want to be a better husband. It made me want to be a better father. I began to understand that we live in a fallen world and that God is love and that He's present, He's available. He's given us the power to overcome and be more than conquerors. He's given us the power to have abundant life.
Adam has since retired from the police force but stays in close contact with his fellow officers. He loves to share about the freedom he found when he surrendered to God.
No matter where you're at, how good things are, or how bad they seem, that in the middle, Jesus is still the answer. He is still the answer. It doesn't matter how dark your days are, how bad you've been, or how good you've tried to be. Jesus is the way. We've painted this picture of a big God with a big hammer who's got a finger on a red button waiting to send everybody to hell. And man, that is not who he is at all. He is love. And when we understand that, it changes everything. And when we experience it, it really changes everything.
Man, how eloquent. I couldn't say it any better. What a terrific guy. God is love. He hadn't got his finger on the button waiting to send you to hell. God is on your side, folks. He really is on your side. And if you have problems, call upon him. Now, remember, we've got telephones here. It's 1-800-700-7000. And if you need somebody to pray with you, if you need somebody to counsel with you, if you want to tell us your joy, you want to tell us your sorrow, you want to pray, somebody's at the phones right now. They'll be glad to listen to the good news, share with you the bad news, whatever you need. And they'll lead you to the one who is love itself. Call in if you have a need, 1-800-700-7000. Wendy.
Beautiful. Thanks, Pat. Well, still ahead, he's the voice behind the worship staples such as Give Thanks and God Will Make a Way. And in just a few moments, Don Moen takes us behind the music of one of his most popular songs. He's here with us live, so don't go away.
Welcome back to the 700 Club. The Oregon couple forced to close their bakery for refusing to make a cake celebrating a same-sex wedding is taking their case to the Supreme Court. Aaron and Melissa Klein had to shut down their business after a state agency fined them $135,000. Now the Kleins are appealing that decision to the nation's high court. First Liberty attorney Kelly Shackelford said the case will clarify whether speech is, quote, truly free if it's government mandated. Well, a group of high school football players are continuing their tradition of praying before games, even after a pastor was stopped from praying with them. Georgia pastor Russell Davis often prayed with Dawson County football team before games. That is until a video of him praying with a team went viral. The Freedom from Religion Foundation sent a letter to the school district demanding they get rid of the pastor. District officials then decided staff and volunteers could no longer pray with the students, but the players haven't let that decision stop them from praying on their own. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com. Pat and Wendy will be back with more of the 700 Club right after this.
When Don Moen was a child, his mother forced him to take piano lessons, and he hated every minute of it. He discovered he had a gift for making music, though, and he's used that gift to bring hope to millions of Christians worldwide.
Internationally renowned and multi-award-winning worship artist Don Moen shares the heartbreaking story behind his hallmark song, God Will Make a Way. Sadly, his nephew Jeremy was killed in a car crash when his family was sideswiped by an 18-wheeler. In his book, God Will Make a Way, Don Moen shares the message behind the song that's touched countless lives and how something so painful turned into something so beautiful.
And Don Moen is here with us now. Welcome back to the 700 Club.
Thank you. It's great to be with you again.
It's great to see you, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you.
Now, the story, God Will Make a Way, the song began with that late night phone call that nobody wants to get. What happened, Don?
I got a call from my mother-in-law late one night, and she, informed me that my wife's sister and husband had been involved in a car accident. They'd been traveling to go on a ski vacation, and their van was broadsided in the Texas Panhandle in the middle of nowhere by an 18-wheeler, and 3 of the 4 boys were seriously injured, and the oldest boy was almost to be 9 years old. Jeremy was killed instantly. And, when you get the news like that, all the scriptures that came to my mind to share with them kind of fell short of what I really wanted to say. And I had to get on the airplane the next day, and I just said, God, give me something to say to this family that would bring hope to them. And I was reading from Isaiah 43, verse 18 and 19 says, don't remember the former things. Behold, I will do something new, and now it will spring forth. I will make a roadway in the wilderness and a river in the desert. And on the airplane, I sketched out the words and the music to that song, God Will Make a Way Where There Seems to Be No Way. And here's the line I know the Lord gave me to say, He works in ways we cannot see.
We cannot see.
That's what you hold on to. You know, even though everything else is looking hopeless, that even at this moment, God is working in ways you cannot see.
Interesting. You were so wanting to have the right words, and instead, He did give you the words, but instead He put it in a song. How did that song, you eventually were able to share the song and the lyrics with the family, with your sister-in-law, and at the funeral.
Yeah.
How did it impact them?
Well, I didn't, I thought I would sing it for the funeral, but I only sang it for them privately.
Oh.
Just the two of them.
Wow.
And I, held them and hugged them, and I said, there are going to be days following the funeral when you're going to need to hear this. And so I made a recording of it, and I said to Susan, put it over the kitchen sink and press play whenever you begin to feel hopeless. And that's all it was. I never did sing it at the funeral, and I didn't sing it for 2 more years. I never wrote the song to record it until a couple of years later. I was at Integrity Music, and I sang for the chapel service. And that day, it's like everybody needed to hear that song. And they said, why don't you record it? And I said, I don't think I ever will. It's a personal song. It was written for a desperate situation in my life.
It just felt too personal. But, even though the song was birthed out of a tragedy, you say it's not a desperate song.
No, it's a song of declaration. It's not a song of desperation. It's a song of declaration. God will make a way. And people need to say that everywhere in the world. I watch the things that you do, Operation Blessing. I see all these miracles, how God makes a way for people every single day. And I think the song just captures that. He's always working in ways we can't see.
Well, Don, I love your book, and when I was reading it last night, I was so shocked to know that you ran as far. You tried to run from your music gifts, and you hated the piano lessons, but you stuck with it. And then you used your gifts allowed you to go to college on scholarship.
Yeah.
But even during that time that you're playing the violin and you're playing the piano, you're still thinking, I want to do something outdoors. You ended up becoming a lumberjack?
Well, I quit. Violin, music was my life. And I just played in symphonies and operas and all this stuff. And I was raised real conservatively.
Yeah.
So my mother made me quit the jazz band at school because I played trombone.
Anything with a beat was considered
when people
naughty.
play music with a beat, they dance. And when people dance, bad things happen. And so I was playing these symphonies, and I was so moved emotionally. I thought, anything I love this much has got to be sin.
Wow.
So I left, and I became a lumberjack in the north woods of Minnesota, driving a bulldozer. And after about a few weeks of that, in 30 below zero,
and you opened your lunchbox, and your peanut butter and jelly sandwich was frozen.
Yeah, just like toffee. I think maybe playing violin isn't so bad after all. And that's when I went to Oral Roberts University.
And you made your way to Oral Roberts, and that's when everything started to gel for you. And
that's when I started focusing on a bit more on Christian music. And I heard a group called Love Song that came through there in the early 70s. And then I joined a group called Living Sound. And I thought I'd get on a bus for a year, and then 10 years later, I got off the bus, all over the world.
That's amazing. And I know you're going to share one of your songs with us, your God Will Make a Way. Yeah. So we're going to let you go ahead and get over to the piano. Where is the piano? There it is, right over there. Okay. Thank you so much, Don.
Thanks.
So Don is going to treat us to the modern classic song, God Will Make a Way. That's also the title of his latest book, and it's one that you can get a copy of in stores nationwide. Now here's Don Moen with his famous song, God Will Make a Way. Welcome back to the 700 Club. It's time for your questions and honest answers. We're going to start with Yvonne. She says, I had some renovations done on my home, but the job was not completed. The contractor put my job on hold while he finished more lucrative projects. It's been months, and I got fed up and said rude things to the contractor. Afterwards, I felt bad and texted him an apology. Then I found someone else to finish the work, for which I'm paying double. Did I handle this correctly?
It sounds you were very loving and very Christian. There's so many jacklegs out there that pretend to be contractors, and they come in and they're underfinanced and understaffed, and they do part way and then they quit. I've seen it done. It means, well, you were very gracious, and I'm sure the Lord will bless you for it.
Yeah. Don't worry. God will pay you back. God will pay you back. Patty says, my son and his friends were recently caught vandalizing a neighbor's home. What should I do? What do I tell him?
I know that's a tough thing to do, but sometimes a kid needs a little shock. They have that business about scared straight. And I really think that he needs to get arrested. And you know, if you let him skate on it, you're nothing but an enabler. I mean, you know, he needs to pay the penalty, and that is a crime. He's vandalizing somebody's house. He's stealing things, grand larceny. You know, I would, whatever you can do, you don't want to break him and destroy him, but the fact that he has to pay the penalty for what he's done, I think is an important thing. All right.
All right. Kim says, Pat, I appreciate your steadfastness and wisdom. However, please defend your stance on supporting a sex change in the life of a confused man or woman. You seem to support this enormous surgical procedure, which physically changes God's plan for a man or woman. 1 Corinthians 14:33.
I don't support all that stuff you're talking about, but what I think is if somebody honestly feels like a woman, and all their life they felt like a woman, and they have hormones that indicate they're a woman, but they're in a man's body, I cannot condemn them that they want to change and actually be a woman. I can't condemn that. But I think what's happening now is that young children are being forced into an unnatural situation, and it's societal. And, you know, I think what Trump wants to do is very important. When you're born, you're a woman or you're a man because of the physical attributes you have. And I think that's where you need to stay. I'm not, the other though, I'm not condemning in what I'm saying. I'm not condemning somebody who feels they're trapped in the body of another sex when they've got hormones that go the other way. But listen, that's a powerful operation, and, you know, I wouldn't do it unless, you know, I just wouldn't do it if you can help it. All right.
Okay, here's Jonathan. A bad string of things keeps happening to me. When I'm down and out, people always seem to take advantage of me even more. How do I break this cycle of being taken advantage of? I'm hardly surviving. I'm in debt for car services, and the work hasn't even been completed. I was told they can't finish the job, but they already took my money. These kinds of things happen to me all the time.
Well, you are, in your mind, you're a loser. And somebody said, I have an inferiority complex. The psychiatrist said, you don't have a complex, you are inferior. What you need to do is begin to declare the fact that you are a child of God, and you take authority over the circumstances around you. And you start the day, this is the day the Lord hath made, and I rejoice and am glad in it, and I am a more than conqueror through him that loved me. Begin to confess those things instead of confessing all these losses. But if you confess failure, you're going to have failure. Well, today's power message is from the book of Psalms. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Thank you so much for being with us, and for Wendy and all of us, this is Pat Robertson, and Lord willing, will you be back tomorrow?
I'll be back tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.